Happy Monday, college football fans. My name is Phil, part of the Buckeye Scoop Radio Network. A lot has happened in the last few days in college football. The seedings are set for the playoffs. Ohio State coming in at that 4 seed, getting a shot in the arm and a shot at redemption. Today I'm joined by longtime Ohio State insider Nevadabuck, where we will dive into the playoffs as well as the latest in the program. So I encourage you to visit BuckeyeScoop.com if you haven't been there already. A lot of amazing content and a very emotional last few weeks in this college football season. So be sure to check it out. Also subscribe here. We love interacting with you. Thank you so much for your support. And here's today's conversation with Nevadabuck. Welcome to the Buckeye Scoop. Happy Monday. I'm joined by Ohio State insider Nevadabuck. What an emotional roller coaster over the last few weeks. Ohio State gets that shot in the arm, coming in as the number 4 seed in the college football playoffs. Your thoughts on whether you think the seedings make sense? You know, I did see a reasonable chance that we would actually jump up into that 3 seed for that Michigan rematch, but it wasn't meant to be. So thoughts on the seedings if you think the committee got it right?
It's not. I don't think they got it right, but I don't think it's egregious. It's not as bad as in past years. But it was interesting that you look at the games and you go, "Wow, Georgia probably could have lost, and Michigan probably could have lost, and TCU did lose, and it wouldn't have changed the top 3 seeds in the playoffs." And that's just weird. That's just weird to me. And I personally think TCU should have moved to 4. I don't think they had as good a win as at Penn State. I don't think that winning at home against Kansas State was close to that. I think beating Notre Dame was better than Texas. I think our loss against number 2 Michigan is clearly the best loss of anybody. So that didn't make sense to me. But we're in the playoff. We got to play Georgia eventually. So I don't think it was bad, but it was odd in that you could have 3 teams that could have lost the final week, and the committee would just toss those games out like they didn't matter. Makes you wonder the importance of these conference championship games.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the critics and pundits have been saying that, you know, why punish a team for playing in the conference championship game? But I think what the committee is saying is you have to look at the totality of the schedule. I mean, an SEC team is playing an FCS opponent in week 9. Are we punishing them for that, right? So we got to look at the totality of this to make that assessment. So shifting back to Ohio State, it seems like the running back room might be the healthiest it's been, you know, perhaps since week 1. All indications from Ryan Day are that Mayan Williams and Trevion Henderson will be back for that college football playoff game. What kind of impact do you think that'll have for us?
Well, I think it'll be huge. I think it'll be huge. Obviously Chip's a fine back, and Dallin's great as well. But neither of them has kind of the break it open type of speed that Trey Henderson has, and Mayan is when healthy and when good, is as good as anybody. Kind of the thunder and lightning type of approach. So no, it's going to be big. Ohio State was missing some key pieces down the stretch, and it certainly came to roost against Michigan. Wasn't the reason we lost for sure, but it would have been nice to have all hands on deck.
So talk a little bit about the attitude shift at Ohio State. So we're coming into this game. I think the opening line was 6.5-point dogs. Ohio State actually has a pretty great track record of the last 10 years as an underdog. However, this is a little bit different because it's coming on the heels of this Michigan loss. What are you hearing as far as what's going on inside the facility? Has there been an attitude shift? Is the team locking in and sort of bonded around this new opportunity to go out and I guess change the storybook on this season?
Yeah, common sense would dictate that, when you go from despair to you have hope. Before the season, we knew at the end of the year, best case scenario, we'd be in the playoff. Well, we're in the playoff. The only difference is we're a 4 seed instead of a 1 seed or a 2, but we'd have to play Georgia eventually. So, everything we want is in front of us. We got to win. It's go on a 2-game winning streak, and we're the national champions. So, yeah, that's a jolt of adrenaline to Ohio State for sure. And sometimes it's even bigger when you come back from the dead, because they can play loose. They're not the favorites. You mentioned their record. They're 8-2 as a dog the last 10 games. Ohio State traditionally has been a great bet as an underdog. And I think if there was going to be the scenario where you're going to beat a team like Georgia, it was going to be like this, where it's going to be a team playing loose, playing with nothing to lose. Maybe we get lucky, get Jackson Smith and Jigba back, which would change everything for us offensively, having that viable third receiver. And then you go out and play a good game and beat Georgia. So no, it's certainly been a shot of adrenaline for the team, and they're all excited. The coaches are excited. For recruiting, for every aspect of Ohio State football, this is very exciting. So yeah, very good news indeed.
So kind of during that stretch of despair, there was, especially from the fans, which can be brutal, a lot of talk about structural and philosophical changes that were coming to Ohio State. I think a big focus has been on the play calling, which, anyone who watched the Michigan film, some of it was a bit baffling, for being honest, coming down the stretch. It's a lot for one coach to do the play calling, manage the entire program. We saw some people even talking about, is he managing substitutions? That's more of a positional coach thing. But do you expect to see any kind of, material changes for this Georgia game, or is that likely now all kicked to the offseason, given that you've sort of got that shot in the arm and a chance for him to, vindicate some of the philosophies that he's put in place throughout the season?
I think it'll be kind of a hybrid. I think there's certainly, I expect that Brian Hartline is going to get a coordinator role, whether that's announced sooner than later. I'm just not sure. The timing of those things is always tough. But I think, that Kevin Wilson, Brian Hartline are certainly going to have a more active voice in terms of the play call. Now, how that manifests itself, I'm not exactly sure, because, like you said, do you try to change something like that up in 30 days before, one of the biggest games in program history? Not sure if they're going to do that or not, but I know they'll have a bigger voice. I know for next year, there's been serious conversation about Ryan Day giving up play calling responsibility going forward, because, as you mentioned, it's a lot to manage. There's a reason why very few college coaches do it. Some do, but very few do, and most of the time those play calls are coming in from the booth, because you just have a better view and you can manage more things and be more of an administrator. So we'll have to see. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to be handled, but I know that Hartline, Fry, and Wilson are certainly going to have a more active voice in terms of the game plan. And I know what they're saying is that that this game plan is going to be a let her rip tater chip game plan. We'll see. I'm not sitting there going, oh yeah, it's going to be great, this is the way it's going to be. But That's what they're saying. And it sure seems like they're playing with house money. So if there ever was a game to do that, this would be the game. So I'm looking forward. I can't wait for it to kick off.
Yeah, Ryan Day did say they plan to be aggressive. But, aggressive usually works out. In the case of the Michigan game, it did not work out so great, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, which brings me to a few questions about the transfer portal. So that Michigan game, unfortunately, we had the light was shining on a few glaring weaknesses on this team. The floodgates have opened with the transfer portal. I guess I would ask first, are there specific areas that you would target going into this transfer portal season that Ohio State can, jump out there and plug in potential holes?
Well, I honestly, I'd be best player available right now. You've got holes on the offensive line, you've got holes on the defensive line, you've got holes at cornerback. People have to remember, college football has changed, and Ohio State has to change with this, because Ohio State has not really demonstrated that they've really embraced this new reality. And the new reality is college football is 100% on-demand free agency every year. So if you want a player, you can plug and play a player. Now, we've done it 3 times to great effect, but Justin Fields, Jonah Jackson, Trey Sermon all came in and did great things for us. But what have we really done since then? You're seeing teams that are doing 10, 12, 15 new players in the portal every season. We're doing one every 2 years. So I think Ohio State's got to embrace this new reality. The players are certainly embracing it. We've got to embrace it as an organization and as a college football program. But in my view, there's never an excuse to have a hole on your lineup. You can't say, well, we're going to be young on the offensive line next year, because there's no reason. Michigan was young on the offensive line, so what they went out and got a guy who might win the Remington from Virginia Tech to be their center and their anchor of their line. That's what you have to do. And it pains me to say that Michigan might possibly be ahead of us in any regard, because I hate that program more than anybody should ever hate a program. But
I'm with you.
we got to get better. We got to get better. We got to get more aggressive. And if that seems mean to the players that are on the current roster, hey, that is big boy football in 2022, 2023. you have to be ready to get the best player available at every position. I mean, heck, USC went out and bought the Blitnikoff winner from Pittsburgh, Jordan Addison. It's like that's what you have to do. And Ohio State's got to respond. Will they? I know they've got the people in place to do it, but they have to embrace that. And maybe that doesn't go with kind of the kinder, gentler family type of atmosphere that Ryan Day is trying to foster at Ohio State. But they're going to have to get ruthless about this because other teams certainly are.
So does a lot of that fall on Mark Pantoni? He's sort of looking at the landscape around the different transfer portal players, but then ultimately it's on Ryan Day and positional coaches to say, hey, we need to pull the trigger here.
Well, it's a three-tiered thing. Like you said, it's Pantoni to identify, it's Ryan Day and the position coaches to kind of authorize. And then don't forget NIL. I mean, all these kids are looking for NIL deals. And, NIL, we can talk about it as a defensive thing, but, like it's great that Jackson Smith and Jigbo or C.J. Stroud are getting $1 million a year in NIL, but they're already on the roster. The ones I want, I'd rather they spend $1 million on NIL getting somebody to come here. And I know they're like, oh, we can't do that. That's not the way. That's exactly how NIL works. That is exactly how it works. So, we could talk around this and stuff, but, we lost Fletcher this year because he's getting $3 million, $750,000 a year to sign elsewhere. And we're going to, if we're not playing big boy football, it's easy to slide. And this is where, we've got holes, no reason to have holes. Go find a player, put them in there, fix it up, and let's go.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point you're completely correct. Why should we go into next season and say, hey, this might be a little bit of a down here, but this is Ohio State. I mean, they've recruited really well. It's not like we have 8 glaring holes on the offense and 7 on the defense. We're talking about a few important positions of need that we need to go out and fill, and then this team is a national title contender just like it is almost every single year. So that should be the standard. I agree with you. So I guess turning outside of Ohio State, and will be interesting also with this nil era. So Colorado has named Deion Sanders as their head coach. They're really kind of bottom of the barrel right now when it comes to Division I programs. Do you think it's realistic he could turn them around in a year or two? And if so, is that because it's going to be very much transfer portal dependent to get that jolt and get things going down there?
Well, I mean, Coach Bryant basically came out and said that. I mean, if you go watch his video there, his opening video, he basically just says that to all the guys. They're gonna move, and he's gonna go do that. And his plan. His plan is go there, have any success, and then bang, I can parlay that into a real job, because Colorado isn't a real job. McCarthy's not coming back, and he's not gonna have Sal and Nisi and luck into that national championship on a 5th down game anytime soon. So. Beautiful campus and everything, but they're not a real college football program. But I think he'll do well. I think he'll do well, not because he's a great coach, though. I think he'll do well just because of flash and dash and NIL and recruiting. Yeah. And he'll do good enough to make them better and more relevant, and that's going to be good enough to catapult himself onto the next job.
I think he's just biding his time, waiting for that Florida State job. I think getting some more experience. That's where I see his end game. Is getting back to Florida State and bring that flash there.
Makes a lot of sense.
So, well, that's all we have for today. It's been very much an emotional roller coaster. I have similar feelings about Michigan and, slowly pulled myself out of that hole, started with that USC game where Utah really brought it to them. And then TCU was just sort of icing on the cake to finish the weekend. So it's going to be a lot of fun down the stretch. Again, if you haven't been to BuckeyeScoop.com, it is as active as ever. There's a lot to talk about with the playoffs looming large. So we encourage you to check it out and join, and make sure to subscribe here. Thank you again, Nevada. It's been a pleasure, and look forward to speaking next time.
Thanks so much for having me.